What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? We're about 10 seconds early. Wanted to surprise everybody. Start the show really promptly today, a little bit early. Just wanted to jump in and see some good chat going on. People hanging out, waiting for the show to start. Looks like OMG Father had a nice little night. Collected up a couple of wins on some small entry slates. That's a great job, man. Definitely, I know that feeling of, boy, I wish I was in some of the bigger contests, but it's always great to win. You know, it just goes to reinforce a lot of the things that we're doing right, and helps foster the faith of those big wins coming. Right, so we'll get the entries in the big tournaments. We'll book some wins in the big tournaments in time to come, I'm sure. We got Pro DJ Stoner in the chat. He's got Lyles, Casas, Semyon, Devers, Yoshida, Duran, Betts. That's when the edibles kicked in on FanDuel. Good stuff. Stephen B's in the chat. Seth Hader's in the chat saying start the damn show. That's why I wanted to click that button as early as I could, Seth. Duran's out. All right. So we got that update came in. What else is going on? Larry C's in the chat. Wes Maxwell. What's up, gang? Terry always starts off frozen on TV for some reason. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a YouTube thing, if that's a TV thing. Fanatics in the chat. Just got the new Galaxy Tab 8, so I can actually do my Fantasy Cruncher and Excel sheets. The phone was getting to be too much. Yeah, I can't imagine doing all that stuff by phone. Like, I put my entries in, I check scores on my phone. Like, that's the sum total of everything I do on phone. Like, I put my placeholder entry that I've got to put in right now by phone, and I check scores. But all my stuff is like, via CSV and Excel and automating all that process. So yeah, I don't know how people do all of that stuff on a phone. I really don't. Trey says, Terry, perfect timing. Just finished dinner. Breaded eggplant and potatoes. Dabbing now to get right. Sounds about right, buddy. It's a pretty delicious sounding dinner. I ate a turkey club sandwich for lunch. Not bad. I had it delivered. I had a few beers last night. It was kind of just like, didn't have breakfast. Just poured coffee on top of the dirty oil. Just not a good combination. So I wasn't feeling great, but I got a turkey sandwich and some fries in me. I feel a lot better. Says you better calm down. Fanatic says Seth, you better calm down and stop yelling at Terry. Turkey clips. Yeah, it was really good. I gotta say, it was. I was expecting one of those like the small triangular cut like triple deckers with the toothpick kind of a thing because I got it from like a diner-ish kind of place. And they actually just did it up as like this giant, thick, like awesome turkey sandwich with some bacon on it and everything. It was really, really good. All right, lineups are in. Lone Wolf, what's going on, bud? Welcome, welcome. Yeah, Larry, what happened in Red Bank that the power went out? Did a storm come through or something? Extra bacon. Oh, come on. I'll always go extra bacon. That just reminds me of the scene in Signs, though, when they're having, like, what they think is their last meal. Mel Gibson's like, I'm going to have a cheeseburger with bacon. Extra bacon. He gets really excited for a minute about the extra bacon as if, like, the world wasn't about to end. Or maybe it was worth it. Obi-Wan, what's good? What's up, buddy? I confused myself. I tried to say, what's up, buddy, and I read your comment that says, what's good, fellas, and I just kind of got lost in it. But what's going on, pal? How you doing, Obi? Good to see you. I think we've got basically everybody trickling in right now. Good crowd to get us started here. Joker's tail wagging behind me in the background there. He's going to get up and start wandering around. After sitting here for like 3 hours just in complete silence, now he's going to get all uppity and pissed off at me. We are approaching dinner time, though, so I guess that's why. Anyway, I think it's an interesting slate. For a 6-gamer, it's kind of got a lot of weird little pieces. It's, it's not a high-end pitching slate again. It's another day where I think we're dealing with like a kind of short but fat type of a slate. It's like a Gimli slate if you're thinking Lord of the Rings. It's not a Legolas, it's a Gimli. It's like short, squat, dwarf style, not like tall, skinny like elf style that peaks high. We've got a couple of name brands on the slate with like Nate Eovaldi's on the slate, kind of name brandish, but not really top end right now. Doesn't really crack the top of the board in kind of a tough matchup. And then we're dealing with like Julio Urias coming off of an injury, Severino struggling. So for me, I'm really looking to the top of the board with Tanner Bybee and George Kirby in my projections, who are kind of like up and above everybody else. And then I think we've got another just day of like mixed bag type of pitching. So there's a lot of different directions this one could go. I kind of want to throw a blanket over a lot of the offense on this slate. Just try and cover my bases as much as possible. No pun intended. As much as possible with getting to some bats. And then get to the pitchers that I have some faith in. Get to a couple of the value pitchers in like a couple of shares here, a couple of shares there. And just see if I can capture enough of these outcomes to find the right result. Because I really think this is one that, especially if Bybee and Kirby don't come through up top, this could go in any direction. So I'm really curious to watch this one. It's going to be a fun one to play. I can't wait to dig into it. Got the article up on the site. We've got the home run picks are up on the site. 2 for 2 the last 2 days with Joey Votto yesterday and Vladdy Guerrero the day before. So check out who we've got up on the site for today's home run picks. We do the team by team. We do the overall. And we've got the power index, the top stacks ranking that we'll talk about as we go through this stuff. So should be pretty good. Any word on Astros pitcher starting? Seems to be a question mark earlier. Is it a question mark? I had Ronel Blanco in there. Still Ronel Blanco on over on Schmabs. That's what came down with my stuff early, but I hadn't gone back to look. So if that changed, let me know. Larry says some car hit a pole or something. Middletown and Red Bank was out. Yikes, that sucks. I wonder if my parents knew that. Parents went to the beach this morning. They have every other Thursday, I think. Some woman comes by to clean the house. So like my dad just wants no part of being there while somebody's cleaning the house. So they go to like for a drive. They go to the beach. So I got a text at like 10 o'clock this morning from my mom. Like, we're on the beach. I was like, I'm still sleeping. Leave me alone. Looked like a nice day on the beach. All right, let's dive into this one. Larry says Blanco's starting. So I think it's probably that. But Trey says Seth Martinez per bat and labs, both. Seth Martinez is starting for the Astros. Is that what you're saying? I'm not seeing that. We'll get it sorted out. Let's dive into this thing. Enough time wasting. Top of the deck here. Yanks and the O's wrapping up their 4-game set here in the Bronx. It's an interesting one. Kyle Bradish, damn it. Did it on the first one. All afternoon I was like, I'm not going to screw it up. I'm not going to say Bradish. Somebody corrected me about that. Kyle Bradish off the top here, 7,200, 8,500, going up against the Yanks with no Aaron Judge. It's that flawed version of the Yankees lineup. I have no real issues taking shots with Bradish here. 23% strikeout rate, a 3.58 ERA, a 3.83 xFIP over the course of the season. Gives up a little bit of power, gives up some premium contact. 2.48% home runs is actually fine, given the fact that he's giving up a 91 mile an hour exit velo. 9% barrels, 44.4% hard hits. He's been good at keeping the ball down, cutting launch angle a little bit. You can see 7.8 degrees this year in a small sample. Last year it was 8.7 degrees, 117 and 2/3, 23 starts last year, 3.34% home run rate. So not outrageously good at keeping the ball in the yard, but not bad for home runs by any means. And a decent strikeout upside pitcher. He's by no means an ace, but on a slate where we've got only a handful of viable starters, I definitely think for price there's plenty of upside here. 7,200, 8,500. It's just too cheap for this spot on a 6-game slate when we've only got 12 starters to choose from. A couple of them are total clunkers. I definitely think there's good reason to go here. Oh, you're right. How about that? Good call there, Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf points out no Stanton in the lineup. First time I'm seeing some of these confirms. I just dropped them in a couple minutes ago. So, yeah, no Stanton in the lineup. That's obviously a major downgrade to the Yankees. And another bump, another tick in Kyle Bradish's favor. So, yeah, we get Volpe leading off, which we were kind of talking about yesterday. He's kind of earned his way back to that spot. I kind of liked it with Rizzo leading off yesterday, though. That was an interesting call. Just put his power in that first spot, the lefty bat in that first spot, let him take a couple pokes at the right field seats, and he's got a 355 on base this year. So I liked Rizzo up there, but with no Stanton, it makes sense to hit Rizzo third, let Volpe lead off. He's been getting on base. He's been hitting the ball well. Everything's kind of turned around for him so far in the last couple of weeks, so knock on wood, it continues with Anthony Volpe, but I think 3,400, 2,900, it's an easy bat to go to, and I think it's a situation where we're both sidesing the setup here. You take some shares of Bradish in some lineups, you take shots with the Yankees in some other lineups. They're very cheap, but with no Stanton, it's definitely downgraded. Volpe, Torres, Rizzo, Maybe some Bader, maybe some Donaldson. No Bowers in the lineup either. He's been rolling along a little bit this season, so he's out of the lineup too. So it's not great, especially after we get to like the 4 spot. Bader's miscast as a cleanup hitter. That doesn't really make a ton of sense, but it's who they've got right now. So from here down, it's very dicey. So very limited interest in any Yankee stacks, and it's really 1 through 5. Maybe a little Billy McKinney if you're getting carried away with building Yankee stacks, especially for 2,000 on the DK slate. That's viable enough. If you've got a lot of Yankee stacks, he should be in some of them. But this is not a good lineup right now. This is not a good spot. So yeah, bump to the Orioles pitcher here. I like him maybe a little bit better than that projection suggests right now. That's still a good projection on this slate, but this is definitely a spot where we can get away with some shares of him. On the other side, 6,900, 7,300 for the ceiling that we know Luis Severino has. That's definitely a very, very good price. You can see he projects out okay in the model, a 3rd or 4th ranked overall projection on a short slate. I don't know if I fully buy it, given how bad he's been, given the idea of a short start, 5 innings. If he gets in trouble in the 5th, Boone might hook him, and then we're dealing with 4 and change innings, no bonuses. It gets kind of dicey down there. So I don't love Severino, but I do love the price for what he can do on the mound on the right night. We've got enough track record with Severino. He claims to be healthy. There's no reason to believe that he's not healthy. He just hasn't really put it together in 8 starts, 40 innings. Hasn't really had one good start. 18% strikeouts, 9.5% walks, 6.30 ERA, a run better in the xFIP, but it's not like a 5.29 is good for the xFIP. 11.9% barrels is problematic, especially in Yankee Stadium. 45.2% hard hits, 90 plus miles an hour of exit velo, a 5.29% home run rate. All of these things are problems. So we're taking the good with the bad with Severino. We're taking him for some strikeout potential here against the Orioles. This version of the lineup, not the best in terms of the average strikeout rate there, but we've got to remember there's a 0 in there and there's a 6.7 in there. So we do have a bunch of guys in like the mid-20s to work with here. Gunner's a terrific hitter off the top of that lineup. That is an aggressively high strikeout rate, but also a fantastic walk rate that Severino just might not have anything to do with here. It might be problematic for him. Gunner's also a really good hitter. He's got 11 home runs, a 201 ISO, an 11.9% barrel rate, pushing 50% hard hits. So he's been terrific. Third base and shortstop eligible. Still very cheap for what he's doing at the plate right now. Then you get Adley, Santander, Ryan O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins. That's just a good run of guys who are going to be hitting from the left side of the plate against Severino here. Just targeting, poking the ball into that right field porch against a guy who's given up this much premium contact. So I think I definitely, as much as I'm getting to Severino, it would probably be in like a 2-to-1 inverse relationship with how many shares of Orioles I'm getting. Like I want more Orioles, I think, than I want Severino. I just think he's a very good value target with an actual ceiling. It wouldn't shock me to see Severino go out and lead the slate today. It would need a couple guys to probably fall short. It would need him to have a good game, a good return to form. But we know he's got that level of talent. We've seen it, just not very often this year or at all this year. So definite enthusiasm about the 1 through 5 for the Orioles. I think Hicks is totally playable. He's had a good series here in the Bronx. He's continued to roll since signing with this team. Always been good at drawing a walk, seeing pitches, getting himself on base, hits for a little bit of power, hits from both sides of the plate, so you get him, he switches up if they go to a bullpen arm. Yanks have the best bullpen in baseball, so it's not like we're chasing the bullpen arm. If they bring in somebody starting in the 5th, might be an upgrade to the pitching depending on how Sevy's doing. You get Colton Cowser and Jordan Westberg, 2 premium prospects in the 7 and 8 spot. Cowser's still dead minimum on both sites, so didn't FanDuel have him at 2,500 or 2,600 yesterday? Cowser? I'm almost positive. Because they dropped him into the slate late. I had to go back and grab a new salary sheet for him. And I'm pretty sure DK had him at the minimum and FanDuel had him at 25. So FanDuel went and said, top prospect in baseball who's been absolutely crushing the minor leagues, scored a run, drove in one yesterday, had a good day in his major league debut. Let's lower his price to the dead minimum. I love FanDuel. All right, so we're getting Cowser and Westberg super cheap at the bottom of the lineup. It makes them very dynamic and flexible. Ramon Urias down there too. That's a good home run bat for a guy who's very cheap in the infield with flexibility. Never is popular in lineups. So 1 through 9, I think I can build a decent number of Orioles stacks here. It's a revenge game for Hisk. They're all going to be revenge games for Hick for a while here in coming to New York. That's for sure. It's amazing how much these people are still booing him. I swear. Like, I'm against booing your own players. I've talked about it on shows. I don't think it's, I think it just gives these guys problems more so in New York than anywhere else. But I'm just not for like booing people. I don't think it helps anything, and especially when this is, a stadium filled with tourists who just bought their Yankees hats and shirts and have no idea who Mickey Mantle was, and or even a more recent reference like Jason Giambi. Like, they don't remember those Yankees days. They just got here and they're just like, oh, we boo this guy, all right, let's boo this asshole. And it just gets so bad. So it was fueling him not being able to perform in Yankee Stadium, and now it's fueling him being able to perform. I do believe there's a little bit of at least if he's not, it's obviously not like he's trying harder because of it, but I think he's very happy to be delivering for the Orioles right now with all these idiots booing him. And I would be too. I can't blame him. waiting for the Joker bark on the the home run lock pick. Yeah, he's right down over this way. I got my hand in his, half my index finger is like in his ear, scratching his ear. Orioles reach around stack or Pornhub stack. Yeah, speaking of fingering ears. Chuck Deuces says, what's crazy is the Celtics, Phillies, and Knicks had the best road records in the NBA last season and iffy home records, obviously because of the fans. Not overly surprising. Yeah. Northeast, we certainly tell them what we think, that's for sure. For better or worse. Interesting offseason for the Knicks. DiVincenzo being our big move. There's got to be something else coming for the Knicks. I really feel like they're kind of oddly structured right now with that. After that move and the Obi trade, it feels like there's something else in the works. Like, it's going to be really thin up front if they go into action with that. I like the DiVincenzo signing. It's not like he's a role player type, kind of like Hart. I like the idea of bringing that Villanova core back here. They forgot the best, they forgot the Bridges component, probably the best player in that group, but yeah, that's all right. But, yeah, it's just interesting. Dennis says Jack McDowell had the right response to a booing home crowd. Good old Blackjack. He was awesome. I love Jack McDowell. I remember that when he flipped off the McHale. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about, Willie. That's the guy they left out of that group, unfortunately. The best player in the bunch. But, hey, well, at least he's playing across town. Maybe they can convince him to come over to a different borough. The Pink Hat Yankee fans, yeah, Larry, exactly. The Pink Hat Yankee fans, the Green Hat Red Sox fans, these people. Rangers and the Red Sox, speaking of which. Interesting pitching matchup here. I think Cutter Crawford's not bad. 6,400, 6,900. I just hate the matchup for him. Going up against this Rangers team when you're giving up some premium contact, giving up some home runs, it's just not a good combination of factors. But he's a talented enough guy, 23.7% strikeouts, 5.2% walks, a 3.92 ERA, a 4.06 xFIP in 57 and a third, 8 starts. I think there's reason enough to, on a slate where, like I was saying before, I'm going to grab a bunch of shares of like Kirby and Bybee, and then a lot of these other guys I'm just going to grab 5, 10, whatever fits and whatever looks like they're putting together interesting lineup combinations for the cheap pricing. And I think Crawford's on that board. He's definitely more interesting at the 6,400 price as an SP2 dart throw on DK than at 6,900 against on the FanDuel single starter slate. But I think there's upside on both sides. He's pitching well enough. The Rangers have come back to earth a little bit. They're still in an elite offense. You can see there's plenty of power coming through the model for them. So I definitely think it's another both-sided situation here. I'll have a lot of Red Sox, and I'll probably have more a lot of Rangers, and I'll probably have more Rangers hitters than I do have Cutter Crawford. But I think he's on the board, at least for a few shots. OMG Father says, I love Brunson. Yeah, I was a huge fan of that signing when they made it, and he just more than earned his money and absolutely fell in love with him as a player, for sure. He's the star of that team right now, but they need that. They need that next piece. They need that. They need to upgrade from Randall or give Randall a true number one to play behind. You can't win with Randall as your number one. That's why I love my Rockies fans. We're here for the view, IPAs, cannabis, and Rocky Mountain oysters. And if they happen to win the game, so much the better. Hunter Bone, what's going on, bud? Should have kept him in Dallas. I'd take him over Kyrie. Yeah, I would much rather have Brunson than Kyrie. As good at basketball as Kyrie is, you just don't need those kind of problems. It's just, yeah, whatever's going on upstairs for Kyrie is definitely an issue. Can't rely on him to play in games. Can't rely on him to be a part of the team. He's certainly a phenomenal basketball player. I won't take that away from him. But yeah, I would so much rather have a guy who's a step down in talent and just there every day, busting his ass to win basketball games. I would so much rather have that, especially in New York. Especially here in New York. Like the Knicks fans just fall in love with a guy like Brunson. Like exactly like I said. Trey says free Kyrie. Kyrie West. Yeah. Bingo. Exactly. So Rangers, if you're going to Rangers, Bats, Semien, and Seager are obvious off the top. Seager's the home run pick for the day at 12.02 in the model. Adolis Garcia at 12.63. Josh Young at 10.29. A lot of home run upside here against a guy in Crawford who's given him up. 4.31% home run rate, 8.5% barrels. In Fenway Park, some lefties in the lineup here, some good stout hitting lefties, some guys who hit from both sides of the plate. So I like the upside for the Rangers up and down. Jonah Heim in the lineup. No Mitch Garver, but Robbie Grossman in there. Ezekiel Duran and Leota Taveras back in the lineup after days off yesterday for both of those guys. Double-digit homers for both of those guys. Handful of stolen bases. 141 and a 131 nice WRC plus. Over 246 and 280 plate appearances, respectively. They've just been great from the bottom of the lineup. Ezekiel Duran, especially, 3,200 three-position eligible on FanDuel. Absolutely sign me up for extra shares of him. He just makes a lot of things work in this lineup. So I really like the positional flex there. It's a matter of like you stick him in the outfield if you're building a stack from the top down. You can use him as a starting point, as a wraparound, and use him in place of either Semien or Seager without losing too much. Like if you pop him in the lineup at second base instead of Semien, you're saving $400. You're using a guy later in the lineup, obviously, so you want to grab some of these bats in the heart here to kind of connect to him. But you get the wraparound in this direction and in that direction, and you save a few $100 putting him at that position. If you use him in place of Seager, it's a bigger downgrade talent-wise, but you save $1,000, and you're still getting Semien. Like probably you go Semien, maybe Adolis, Young, Duran, and probably low for me. But if you're on DK, probably Jonah Heim as a cheap catcher. So there's just a lot of ways to put this lineup together. I really like the lineup here. Obviously, you don't get that positional flex on Ezekiel Duran on DK. So that's more a FanDuel conversation. Yeah, OMG Father, I definitely want Duran in my stack as well. 306, 346, 530, 224 ISO, 12 homers. Yes, please. On the Sox side of things, Evaldi's interesting. The velo's come down. The strikeouts have dipped a little bit since the start of the year, but overall he's still pitching fairly well. He is not concerned, he said, about the velo. He thinks it's just a mechanical hiccup that it'll come back as the season goes on. He went 7 fairly clean innings in his most recent start after we were a little concerned about what the depth was going to look like, and seems perfectly fine. So I'm willing to go to him, but I don't get a great projection here on him against the Red Sox. 10,000, 9,900 for only 24 and change fantasy points. He's a little bit downboard compared to some of the other guys. I went into the back of the model. I was tinkering. I was looking to see if there was something that was holding his projection down, and this was the true projection that was coming through. So I'm just going to kind of ride with it. I didn't want to like force feed him extra innings or anything like that to just force this projection higher. It's probably, from what I saw over on what RG had him at, it's like 6 points behind that. So like a pair of strikeouts or a clean inning or something behind where they've got him. But I'm comfortable keeping him here. And if he's projected here in a game where it's another situation where I don't know that this game necessarily goes completely pear-shaped with the Rangers totaled above 5, the Red Sox in the mid-4s. Like we talked about yesterday when both teams were over 5. It came down by half a run before game time. But we were talking yesterday about, like, I really felt like that one with 2 good pitchers on the mound was just going to kind of land in the handful of runs scored and not a really DFS-relevant game kind of a position. And I think that's what we're dealing with again today. I think Crawford's good enough to hold down the Rangers a little bit. Evaldi's certainly good enough to hold down the Red Sox some, but I think both teams are going to be good enough that they're going to put scores on both of these pitchers as well, where you don't necessarily want Evaldi at price. You don't necessarily want Crawford with a lack of a realistic ceiling, but the good discount price. So It's one that kind of falls in between for me. I think I'm going to bats on both sides. I'll have some of the pitchers on both sides, but I don't know if I expect a slate winning score to come out of this one, which is a little weird. So it'll be like reduced exposure on all of these elements for me, I think. If I'm going to Red Sox, we don't have Jarren Duran leading off, which sucks. I like him in that spot, but Verdugo's a stellar leadoff hitter. 357 on base percentage, 165 ISO, 6 home runs. Puts bat on ball fairly well, doesn't strike out. Ahead of Justin Turner, who's having another very, very good season. 282, 354, 461 for Turner. 21% better than average creating runs, 13 homers. He's been really good this year. Only 4,000, 3,300, easy to get to. Yoshida Devers is the big lefties here in the lineup. Yoshida's excellent at creating runs, excellent at driving them in, excellent at getting on base. Really like the hitter. Not a massive power hitter. 9 home runs on the season, a 171 ISO. But you leave the massive power hitting to Rafi Devers after him in the lineup for only 4,900 on DK, which is just a total mistake price. I don't care about his triple slash. We've talked about it. Just don't care that his triple slash is down a little bit. But I think it's a definite spot to go to Rafi Devers again. Duvall in the lineup. All his right-handed power for cheap is perfectly fine to go to. Tristan Casas back in the lineup today, 2,400, 2,600. We've talked a number of times already about him. We're going to see a big second half from this kid. I'm utterly convinced. Tried to trade for him in the Dynasty League, got shot down. 13.3% barrels, 47.6% hard hits, 13.4% walks is what I'm really focused on. He's just been good at the plate in terms of those things that I care about. The walks help offset the strikeouts. I think the power's coming with all that premium contact that he makes. I think we're going to see better results in terms of the ISO, in terms of the home run output. So I really like the opportunity today for Casas, and then going forward, I like the opportunity. So if I'm going to Red Sox, I'm getting down to at least the 6th spot there, and then probably stopping there. Enrique Hernandez, David Hamilton, Connor Wong, take them or leave them. Wong makes sturdy contact as a cheap catcher, like we always say. Hernandez has been a journeyman utility man type who's got 6 home runs, 3 steals this year, and 35% worse than average creating runs. I don't really need to go to Enrique Hernandez there. So limited interest in the bottom end of the Red Sox. The top 6 looks pretty good. Definite shares of Eovaldi, but I don't love him at price compared to some of the other guys. And then some interest in Cutter Crawford value. Definite interest in Rangers bats through the top end, including 7 and 9. OMG Fasada says, Wong is always my favorite value catcher. Yeah, he's got a really good contact profile, 9.8% barrels. The hard hits have come down a little bit, 36.6% hard hits, but 6 home runs and 212 plate appearances. Him and Higashioka are very similar in that regard. They both put bat on ball fairly well. Higgy actually does it a little bit better, but has more limited results for weird baseball reasons. But yeah, he's a guy that you can always get to. Chuck says Bybee's 33% on FanDuel. Woof, that sucks. That's a spot I absolutely love. I'll probably be pushing that kind of ownership on a short slate. I see now FC has Valdez with no ownership, and 2 other sites didn't have any pitcher. Now it makes sense. Valdez was earlier the day before. Oh, this is the Houston starter we're talking about. Framber Valdez? Is that who you guys were? I thought they had decided to IL him. Am I wrong about that? Framber's starting on Saturday. Per CBS, anyway. Ronald Blanco starting on Thursday. So we're still Blanco. All right, cool. All right, so let's move on from this one. Got some thoughts on that. Coming up on 5 o'clock. A lot of time left for only a couple of games here. So the Bybee spot, yeah, really like this opportunity. You hit the nail on the head. Is there Casey game is off and on rain. There's going to be hard to deal with. The hitting weather is super premium. Interesting. I hadn't actually looked at the weather. I still want to get to shares of Bybee. I would hope that maybe some concerns about weather would maybe push a little bit of public ownership away, but it sounds like he's going to be super popular. And I think it makes total sense. We've been targeting this Royals team fairly successfully with similarly talented, less talented pitchers. So I think there's a pretty good opportunity for this kid. He's been pitching well, 24.4% strikeouts, a 4.27 xFIP underneath the 3.46 ERA. Hasn't really given up much power, only 2.18% home runs, a 7.1% barrel rate. So I really like the pitcher. He walks a couple too many at 8.4%, but that's a non-tragic walk rate. Doesn't induce a ton of swinging strikes or throw an overly overwhelming amount of strikes, but just a good effective pitcher for these prices against a free swinging Royals team. 26.5% strikeout rate for this confirmed Royals lineup. Just easy target for a talented pitcher. I just don't like the ownership, but at price, at where he projects for me on the board here, I think I'm just going to ride with the public. If they're at like 33 and I'm at like 20, 25, I'm happy. Even if I push up toward that 30% range, I'm probably okay with it on a short slate. It's just a matter of how many shares I want to spread around to some of those other lower end options. Like how many shares of Sevy do I want for a better price on FanDuel? Things of that nature. But I have more confidence in the Bybee play for sure. I think it makes a ton of sense to get here. The weather, let's see. It looks like... Yeah, it looks like, I guess, one of those typical Midwestern might have a pop-up storm over the stadium kind of reports as of right now, which I think was kind of what you were hinting at in the chat there, like on and off type of rain. Might get frustrating, might get that delay. That would suck. The delay is obviously the one thing that we don't want. Running into that stop and start is always a problem, particularly when it's a young pitcher, a prized young pitcher. Wouldn't like that situation for Bybee. So maybe something to monitor as we get closer to lock. Right now, I'm just going to fire away with it, particularly with the ability to change out of the position on the FanDuel slate. We were at 6 likes with 5 watching at one point. 37 people haven't hit the like button. Yeah, that was a much better ratio earlier. Hit that like button. I appreciate it, guys. I appreciate you staying on top of it. For anybody who's new out there in the chat, I'm not great at that kind of stuff or the whole promotion thing, but I do appreciate those likes when I see them. I know they're valuable somehow in the whole YouTube algorithm, steering people here, so make sure you hit it. Hit the old subscription button down there so you know when we go live. It's a little bit variable from time to time, depends on how my day's going. Today I slept in a little bit. Like I said, had a couple beers, enjoyed my night last night. Slept in a little because I knew it was a short slate. Kind of took my time writing the article, so I had to push the show back to about 4:30 because I was a little slow. Took my time getting through some stuff today. So sometimes that happens. It helps to subscribe so you know when we go live. There's a free Discord link down in the description down there. So click on that, jump in, join the community. We're chatting about baseball and all sorts of different topics all through the night. Mamba says, who we got on the SP2? SP2. It's an interesting one today. I mean, we can hop over real quick. If you got somewhere to be. Blanco's not a terrible option at 68. I think Bradish is Bradish. God damn it. I think Bradish at 72 is probably the correct answer there. Just take a shot against the Yanks. If you trust anything about the upside of Severino, obviously he's a little bit cheaper. He projects better for me just because there's some history there. I don't necessarily believe in his projection any more than I believe that the Kyle Bradish has the upside to go beyond it. So, yeah, it's probably Kyle Bradish as the correct answer. I don't really see upside here, or here. Maybe Cutter Crawford. Doesn't project well, obviously. But maybe. If I was building a bunch of lineups and I needed cheap SP2s in all of them, that would be my rotating group of guys. It would be minor shares of Sevy, definitely shares of him, and him. That would be my group of cheapos. It's I'm kind of cheating there because I'm just telling you the 3 talented guys at cheap prices. Terry obviously doesn't like Radish's pronunciation right. I don't know why it's in my head as Bradish. I really don't. Bradish. I gotta get that one. Gotta lock that one in. He's so good at pronunciations. Yeah, give me Bob Johnson and I trip over it all day. So yeah, I would probably go against my Yankees there as the most likely of those cheapo SP2 options to spoil the board for the end of this show. Getting back to this one, no love for Jordan Lyles on the mound. If anybody's got a good reason out there to roster him here, I'd love to hear it. I couldn't find one. 91 and 2/3 innings, 16 starts, 16.3% strikeouts, a 5.47 xFIP, a 6.68 ERA, a 4.83% home run rate, and 11.1% barrels. I even reluctantly came around to saying we should probably play some Guardian stacks today, which I was hoping to avoid having to do, but it just looks like a really targetable spot. If it's good hitting conditions, if we get weird weather, that typically helps bats. So I really like the spot. They also get Josh Naylor back in the lineup today, which is a big bump for them. He's been their other productive bat. I say other because it's him and Jose Ramirez in the middle of the lineup that have been the only two productive bats. But I think we can actually use the Guardians today. In some spots, they can come through against a 0 strikeout pitcher who gives up a ton of power, who gives up a ton of sequencing, who's going to allow them to make contact. They just need a couple balls to drop in. They need a couple guys to just get on base, and I think they could have a pretty big day at the plate. So with reluctance, or with at least some degree of hesitation, I'm going to go to Guardians here. It's Steven Kwan off the top. We're hoping we get the old Steven Kwan who got on base at a 370-something clip last year, hit 300, stole a bunch of bases. The steals have been there. The steals aren't really falling off, but the run creation's way off. The on-base is way off. But a good, productive guy when he's going right. At the very least, he puts bat on ball and is very difficult to strike out at 4,100, 2,800. So you get him off the top. You get Ahmed Rosario. He's a guy I was expecting to be around 2020, maybe somewhere a little above. 2 home runs, 9 steals, 263, 309, 359. Just massively disappointing. But he's fitting in at shortstop today at 3,800, 2,900. You just go to it. You swallow the bitter pill, unfortunately. Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, both hit for power. 13 homers, 10 homers, 129 WRC+, 117 WRC+. Ramirez, obviously the better between those two players, but I think you want them both in the majority of your Guardian stacks. You get the decision point between Josh Naylor and Josh Bell at first base on DK. I prefer Naylor, but I do think you should work in a few rotating parts of Bell. Bell's very playable on the FanDuel slate at 2,600 in that util spot alongside Naylor. No outfield eligibility anymore for Naylor, which is kind of a bummer. Sticking him only at first base is kind of limiting for this lineup, but what can you do? Andres Jimenez, obviously a very good player in terms of his raw talent, but it just doesn't really come through on the field so far. 6 home runs, 11 stolen bases this year, a 134 ISO, 95 WRC+. Another guy who was like a kid that we were expecting to take some strides forward, become like a 2020 type player. He was 17-20 last year. There's talent there. There's ability there. Created runs 40% better than average last year. It's like how much better all these guys were for run creation last year than what they've done so far this year. There's the chance that this team could get back to, they're not devastating for power by any means, but there's a chance they could get back to this hit tool, speed focused run creating type of a squad in the second half this year. It's definitely something I want to keep my eye on, because I would like to be ahead of the curve if that happens. Because I think people are just so soured on going to the Guardians that they'll be behind the curve if that comes to be. So maybe today's a good starting point for it. I'm going to have some in my lineups. Hopefully it comes through. Royals on the other side, I do think, especially with Bybee getting that owned, I think there's probably a little bit of potential to grab like the top 4, top 5, top 6 here. A few stacks, nothing crazy. There's at least a little bit of home run potential. There's a little bit of potential, just a young pitcher on a weird weather night. Maybe they get to him. Maybe they get into the Guardians' shaky bullpen a little bit early. So there's good reason to think that Bobby Witt. Now I'm all over the place with these names. Bobby Witt, Sal Perez, Nick Prado, maybe some Olivares, maybe some MJ, maybe some Michael Garcia off the top. But like these 3 hitters, I kind of like those 3 guys. I think they're good prices for all 3 of those guys. 4,500 for Sal Perez is very cheap. 2,800 is very cheap for him. 15 home runs on the season, down to a 195 ISO, but tons and tons of upside. So the top 5 there, or top 6, including Melendez, and his inability to come through for stats. You guys broke Terry, yeah. So MJ, we talked about a number of times. Weird case, 11.2% barrels, 50.8% hard hits. Doesn't turn into home runs, doesn't turn into ISO. But one day it might. Waters, Blanco, Nicky Lopez off the bottom. A pretty weak bottom end that supports the upside for Tanner Bybee on the mound. So this one's enthusiasm about Bybee. Gonna definitely get to Guardians, but I won't be so enthusiastic about having to do it. I just think it's a good spot. And then maybe some contrarian stacks of Royals. Just a few. Not a lot. Handful. Just in case kind of a thing. It's just one of those spots where it's like maybe you'll see a few people, a few sharp players with a handful of Royals and they connect against a highly, highly owned pitcher. So I kind of want to be part of that, but not in any massive share of my stacks. Thank you, Monty. Monty Pritchett says, show some support. Great content once again. Smash that like button. I appreciate that, buddy. Welcome, welcome. All right, 3 to go. Mariners, Astros. Definite interest in George Kirby here. Excellent pitcher, in my opinion. 21.4% strikeouts in 101 innings. Not a knock him down, drag him out kind of a pitcher in terms of strikeout rate, but I love that he doesn't get himself in any trouble. 2.2% walks. Just really good at pitching clean innings, keeping himself off the scoreboard, booking the occasional strikeout. I just really like the opportunity for him at 9,600, 10-2 against an Astros team that has been fairly low end overall this season. They're not the biggest strikeout group in the world, but I'm not really hunting for a massive strikeout total from him. I just want to book a good handful, 6-7 clean innings, get me a quality start, help me chase a win. I think there's a lot of upside for all of that for George Kirby here today. So he's definitely a pitcher I'm enthusiastic about getting to. I hope that he doesn't get crazy owned in what might be perceived as not a great matchup. 3.21 ERA for him on the season, only gives up 2.74% home runs, a 3.64 xFIP, a 104 WHIP. Just a very talented pitcher, just a guy with just a lot of control and command on the mound, and a guy who just knows what he's doing up there and knows how to work his way through these lineups. So I really like getting to him. I wish there was more strikeout upside, and there could be. He was a better strikeout pitcher last year, 24.5% last year in 130 innings as a rookie. So I do believe there's a little bit of a strikeout ceiling beyond what we're seeing in the total so far this year. So definite enthusiasm about Kirby. I don't necessarily need to go to a lot of hedge positions on the Astros. A couple would be fine. I like the lineup with Chas McCormick hitting 6th instead of 8th where he was projected earlier in the day. I don't love the Mauricio Dubon top part of the lineup. No Altuve today, which is a big downgrade to that lineup, obviously. But Bregman, Tucker, maybe some Jose Abreu, maybe some Diaz and McCormick in the middle there. Like those 4 or 5 guys like right through here is where I'm focused. It would be a handful of stacks at best. Not a lot. Bregman comes through for power from time to time, but he's not the star hitter he once was. Tucker's kind of struggling this year. 13 homers, 14 stolen bases, 33% better than average. Struggling's not the right word, but he hasn't been the hitter that he was the last 2 years. I think he'll get back there eventually, but right now I think we're taking him as we get him. I think there's a lot of weight on him too, trying to cover for Jordan. So I think there's definitely, struggling is tough, like I said, for a tough word to use for Tucker, but there's an appropriate word I'm not landing on that's hasn't been up to par, let's say. Abreu pulling himself together, 7 home runs now, a 112 ISO, 79 WRC+. Those were a lot lower a couple of weeks ago. McCormick is somebody that I think everybody knows I'm a fan of here. 215 ISO, 8 homers, 8 steals, and 184 plate appearances. Only cost 2,800, rarely overly popular in the outfield. Yeah, Larry, I'm with you. I thought Pena was going to be good when his little breakout last year. Had a nice season last year at the plate. It's funny, though, if you look, like the counting stats aren't really all that far off. Halfway through the season, 10 home runs. He hit 22 last year. 11 stolen bases last year. He's at 8 already this season. So, I mean, in ways, he's equaling the counting stats production. And 251 is not off from 253. 306 is above 289. I'm looking at the right line here, right? Yeah, I think we just got a little carried away even last year in thinking that he was special when he's probably just like kind of average, right? Like this is arguably he's playing better this year. The ISO's down a little, the slug's down a little, but the on base has improved. The average is down, but 0.002 is not really an issue. The home runs are basically on track. Stolen bases are a little ahead. So it's weird. I ran into that the other day too when I was writing about him. Yeah, maybe a little bit there, and then the idea that he had just he started out really good in replacing Carlos Correa, and it was just like, oh wow, this kid's gonna just kind of slot right in, and they're just gonna keep on rolling. So it's just interesting. He'll be one to watch for sure. Julio hasn't been as good as last year either. Yeah, I think Julio's pulling it together a little bit, but Michael Harris started out the season ice cold too. He was last year's NL Rookie of the Year. A lot of guys who had, who we thought were here came down a little bit, but some of them are working their way back. Like Harris has been outrageously good, and I think he's going to finish the season right where he was. I think Julio will as well. Now Julio, for all his faults in like average, pretty advanced strikeout rate, still 13 home runs, 20 stolen bases, creating runs 7% better than average. He was a lot better than that last year. But there's definite reason to continue believing in Julio here. Don't burn your Julio rookie cards just yet. Yeah, Monty makes a good point. Considering what Carlos Correa is doing in Minnesota, I doubt the Astros are too worried about Pena's sophomore slump. That is a very, very good point. Correa's still hitting the ball hard. Still hits home runs from time to time. But yeah, he's in that bucket. Lindor, Dansby Swanson, a bunch of these underperforming, highly paid shortstops. Lindor's good for power, but not hitting for like average, not getting on base. Swanson's been the opposite of those guys, where he's not hitting for power when he usually does, but he's still getting on base and so on and so forth. So it's just a weird year for a lot of those premium shortstops, though. Continue on with this one. So enthusiasm about George Kirby, minor interest in a few stacks of Astros as a hedge position. And then Ronel Blanco here, somewhat interesting. The Mariners have been feeding strikeouts to opposing pitching. He's got a 22.2% strikeout rate over 40 innings, 5 starts. That's kind of where the good news ends with him, though. That and a 16% swinging strike rate, which is just a dominant swinging strike rate. But the 4.73 ERA, the 5.34 xFIP, the 5.68% home runs, and the 12.5% walks are really difficult to trust and kind of concerning. I do think at price, 6,800, 6,300, he's probably worth a couple of darts, just in the idea that he could find a few bonus strikeouts here with all those swinging strikes and rack up a nice little surprise type start here at a very low price. What I can't imagine is going to be overly outrageous popularity. So I like the spot here. I like getting some discount shares of Ronel Blanco in small doses. Just, if I have 10, it's probably a lot. But I think he's viable, if nothing else. And then you take some Mariners bats on the other side of it, because there's definite home run upside for them. So we're looking at Julio, we're looking at Teoscar, we're looking at Cal Raleigh, Eugenio Suarez, Jared Kelnick, maybe some Mike Ford in there. Less trust for those two lefties down toward the bottom of the lineup than the guys in the heart of the lineup here. But there's tons and tons of strikeouts through that stretch. Only J.P. Crawford and Ty France really limit strikeouts in this lineup at all. Everybody else 25 or above, and Jose Caballero at the bottom, I guess. But everybody through the heart of the lineup is 25% and above. So clear strikeout upside for Ronel Blanco. But they also put bat on ball really well. A lot of double-digit barrel rates, a lot of premium hard hit rates. So it's not a safe spot by any means. It's a spot I definitely want to get both sided on. So it's probably another one where it's like a 2-to-1, where for every one share of Blanco I got to, I would have 2 Mariner stacks in a full slate of 150. I think there's a good chance that they have a pretty decent game here against him. Not as strong a chance coming back the other way for him to find that big strikeout performance, I don't think. So if I'm ranking it, it's Kirby like way the hell up here. Mariners bats, Blanco, Astros bats pretty far down. Keep moving here. A couple of targetable pitchers. I'm expecting this to be a source of offense today. I can't find any real good reason to go to Ryan Nelson or Carlos Carrasco in this one. Nelson, 17 starts, 90 and 2/3, 16.5% strikeouts, a 5.02 xFIP, giving up 91.2 miles an hour of exit velo on a 15.4 degree launch angle. He should have given up more home runs than 2.84% so far this year. So I think he's gotten a little bit lucky there maybe. 10.5% barrels, just an aggressive number of barrels, going up against a team that has a few pretty premium home run hitters in it, most specifically Pete Alonso, obviously, in the heart of the lineup there. But Lindor could definitely hit one out. Tommy Pham can hit one out. Nimmo can hit one out. Even a guy like Daniel Vogelbach can find the right night here. 187 plate appearances, 5 home runs on the season for Vogelbach. It hasn't been pretty. Francisco Alvarez from the bottom of the lineup, 15 home runs already on the season in his young career. Definite home run upside here for the Mets. Not a ton of it coming through the model. Only Alonso above the magic number here. But I think current form-wise, small sample overall for the career for Nelson, I think this is a pretty targetable pitcher here. He doesn't strike anybody out. Definite power upside. So I like going to stacks of Mets. Open it up with Nimmo off the top. He's a terrific leadoff hitter who gets on base, provides correlated scoring, provides individual scoring. 13 homers and a 46.7% hard hit rate. He should probably be more expensive than 46.35 leading off for this team every day. I think it's the team's overall underperformance that's kind of kept him a little bit cheap. Tommy Pham's been really, really good this year. 9 homers, 10 steals, a 136 WRC plus in 217 plate appearances. Earned a promotion to the top of the lineup. Now playing every day. I think you'd definitely go to Pham, assuming that's where he's hitting. I like him less if he's hitting 7, 8, 9, but I think he's viable still from down there if you're going to a bunch of Mets stacks. Lindor, I was just talking about before, still a 12.1% barrel rate, 46% hard hits, 17 homers, 11 steals, 221 ISO, even 7% above average creating runs, despite the 221, 307 part of his triple slash there. So he's underperforming for sure, but still in productive, playable ways. And if it just prices him down to 4,900, 3,500, when I believe that the turn is coming, when most of the things that I want to pay him to do, he's still doing anyway, I think we can still just roster Francisco Lindor pretty enthusiastically here. Alonso, I know hasn't been the same since the injury, but overall, just one of the premium home run hitters in the game these days. So you can definitely get to him. McNeil is a slap hitter who needs to get lucky, needs teammates to drive him in. You take him, you leave him. Marte is good for some counting stats from time to time. Vogelback, like I said, maybe a little bit of upside for power. And then Alvarez and Beatty are playable from the last two spots. Getting Beatty, a premium rookie bat, 227 plate appearances, only 5 home runs, but 250. 250, 319 is fine on the front end of the triple slash. 6% below average creating runs, fine, but 48.3% hard hits in that small sample. That's probably worthwhile for 2,800, 2,500 on the left side going up against a guy like Ryan Nelson. I don't see any reason to skip Brett Beatty in a bunch of Met stacks anyway. Looks like some Braves trade chat going on in the chat down there. Braves got a lot of pieces to move around. They're going to do something. We were talking about it a little bit the other day. I definitely think they're going to do something. Acuna's contract was pretty laughable. Yeah, that's for sure. I drafted his younger brother as my third pick yesterday. I only had 3 picks in the draft because I got a bunch of guys that I wanted to keep. Every year you got to cast guys off or keep them, and you only get the commensurate amount of spots that you have for draft picks that you have for open spots. So I took the kid I was talking about from Detroit, or I took Paul Skeens 1-1 out of LSU. Then I took the kid from Detroit, and then my third pick after the show, I took Acuna's younger brother who is 17 and plays. He's an infielder right now, but a lot of international guys are infielders when they sign and then become outfielders or whatever. But he's playing for the Twins. His other brother. There's 2 other Acunas. The older of his younger brothers plays for the Rangers. Luis Angel, I believe, is his name, and he's on the Rangers. And then Brian Acuna is with the Twins. Yeah, OMG, Brian Acuna. No, Luis. That's the other one. Luis Angel. He's the older of the 2 younger brothers. He'll be here first. My kid's a bunch of years out, if he makes it at all. So I've got him at 17. I've got one of Vladdy's younger brothers at, I believe, about to turn 17. He's in the Rangers organization. And then Vladdy's other brother, one of Vladdy's other brothers, who's 16 and I believe still unsigned, that I drafted last year. So I've got 2 of Vladdy's brothers and Acuna's brother. Vlad Guerrero Sr. has, I believe, 6 sons. So if you got dynasty teams, I'm not falling for that, Dennis. All right, let's talk Mets. Let's talk Carlos Carrasco. I think he's been pretty much a disaster on the mound. He hit a season high with 6 strikeouts in the last game, but just hasn't been good, hasn't been reliable, hasn't been pitching deep innings. Couple of 3-4 inning starts, went 5 in his most recent outing. I just don't trust it with Carrasco at this point. I think it's clear in the numbers: 5.94 ERA, a 5.20 xFIP, only a 16.3% strikeout rate, 10.8% walks. Pretty ugly here. So don't really like it. Not going to go there. Even at 5,300, 6,400, it's just not, like, even in a worse matchup, I don't think I'd really be going to it. If he was against like maybe the Tigers or somebody, maybe you could hang a few shares on it. But against the low strikeout Diamondbacks, who have been so good this year, I just don't want to target this team with a low strikeout pitcher. I need a good strikeout ace, somebody in the mid-20s or higher to really want to target these Diamondbacks. Look at all these low strikeout rates. Everybody here below 20% strikeouts through their top 7. And that's several premium power hitters. Their best players all below 20%. I just don't need to target this team. So that's going to lead me right into shares of Diamondbacks. I think it makes a ton of sense. They're totaled over 5 in Vegas. I'm sure they'll be popular. There's plenty of upside here, though. A lot of home runs through the heart of the order here. That's 65 combined home runs for those 4 hitters, for Marte, Carroll, Walker, and Gurriel. That's a pretty good total for a 4-hitter bunch. Kind of under-discussed, their power upside, especially when you combine that power upside with this lack of strikeouts. That's one of the better bunches. That's one of the better groups of 4 hitters in the league. So I really like getting to that core of 4 guys. You can bolt on Araldo Perdomo from the leadoff spot. I really like him up there at 383. At 383 on base, rather, setting the table for these guys. Emmanuel Rivera's had a nice 161 plate appearances, 309, 335, 395. 96 WRC plus, hasn't hit for any power, but a guy who can put bat on ball from down here in the lineup, or if he hits higher in the lineup, if they change things up. McCarthy's shown his hit tool has come around a little bit. 18 stolen bases and 197 plate appearances and actually making contact and delivering at the plate now. Only 19.8% strikeouts from him. And then Gabriel Moreno, Alec Thomas, playable mixed parts at the bottom. I don't know how Senga got 12. Yeah, so Senga's a good strikeout pitcher, though. I didn't actually realize that he got 12. I think I was a little out of it by then. But yeah, he's a good strikeout pitcher. He's like a 28% strikeout pitcher. That's a big, big difference than a 16% strikeout pitcher. And when we were talking about it yesterday, we were saying let's go to some shares of Senga. My take on Senga was more, I'm terrified that they're smart enough to wait out his splitter and just draw the walks. They're not aggressive at drawing walks, but there's a couple guys who do it well. And then the low strikeouts combined with what he does on the mound specifically was bugging me. Longoria pitch clock strikeout. Yeah, him hitting second with that 30% rate was also a tick in Senga's favor there. Chuck says everything's telling me Bybee will get shelled. Everything sort of says he should have an 8 strikeout, 6 inning clean game, but I feel like he'll get shelled. Yeah, look, there's definitely a little bit of potential for that to happen. And when I was talking about it, when I wrote about it today, I was saying I think I want to take a few hedge stacks, a few contrarian stacks from the top of that Royals lineup. Just grab the power bats, grab the lefties, grab Sal, Bobby Wet, whatever we want to call him, throw him in the lineup, and off you go. You've got a few contrarian Royal stacks. It's a fairly sharp position, I think, against a rookie pitcher. Probably won't work out. It's one of those plays that we don't care if it works out. I mean, we care, but we don't care when it fails because we only need it to succeed a few times a year when we do that to really make it a very, very profitable play. It's just the matter of identifying that spot and making that play consistently enough that when it does hit, it hits well for you. Like people who just play the total contrarian plays every single day sometimes don't do it right and sometimes just burn money. Sometimes you see the sharper players of the world, some of the stochastic guys have been very good at this over time. Just jumping on the correct team rather than saying like, I'm going to play the Tigers every day because nobody does and they suck and every now and again they'll win is not the correct way to do that. Identifying the correct contrarian stack to go to every day is the right way to go about that. And some of those guys are very, very sharp at doing it, and it wouldn't totally shock me if that was the Royals today. So I'm going to still be limited interest in, how much I get to it, but I'm going to make sure that I have a little bit. I do like Bobby quite a bit, though. I think he's a very talented kid. So, yeah, this one was basically all bats on both sides for me. Definitely a lot of Mets. I assume the Mets will be a little bit less popular than the D-backs here. So that'll lead me to probably at least even shares, if not maybe a little bit more Mets than D-backs. But I want both sides of this one in terms of the bats. And if I come up with 0 shares of both pitchers, I'm perfectly fine with that. Oops. Last game on deck. Only 5:27. Who had the under on 90 minutes? I don't know. No McCarthy in the Arizona lineup. All right. Let me jump back there. Not up on Schmabs yet. Mariners lineup looks roughly how we had it. Kelnick hitting 5th. Crawford, Julio, France, Teoscar, Kelnick, Suarez, Raleigh, Ford, Caballero. So same lineup, just different order. Kelnick hitting 5th. Kelnick becomes more interesting hitting 5th rather than 8th or 7th where he was projected. Cal Raleigh you can take in either spot a little bit more because he's a catcher. So like where you're using him on DK, it doesn't really matter if he hits 5th or 7th. Where for Kelnick, it gives him a little bit of more value in the outfield there, I think. Minor uptick for him, but no real change. All right, so this one, the Pirates, big dogs going up against Julio Urias in Los Angeles here. I question the innings total for Urias. He only went 3 and change, got tattooed in his return from injury, hadn't pitched since mid-May. Came back last week, I want to say, just the other day on the 1st, right? Where is it? It's in this article somewhere. Yeah. 3 innings start against Kansas City, the team we were just talking about. Allowed 5 runs on 6 hits, 2 strikeouts, 2 walks. He's really good, but I think we're only getting like 80, 85. One of the other sites had him at like 80, where they do pitch count in one of their models. So that's kind of where I was expecting him. He projected better for those guys than he does for me, but he doesn't not project well here for me. So I'm kind of torn on what I want to do with Urias here. 22.5% strikeouts, 4.23 xFIP, 4.94 ERA, 33.9% hard hits, 5.74% home runs doesn't really go with this hard hit rate. The barrel rate's up this year. But over time, he's been at least moderately effective at limiting barrels. 5.3 2 years ago, 6.7 last year, and very good at limiting hard hits. So I have at least a healthy respect for Urias as a pitcher. I haven't gone to him a ton in years past. He's been better for strikeouts at 24 and 26%. But he's one of these guys that always falls in like an awkward price spot for me, which isn't really the case today at 8,700. 94 on DK, I think, is a little bit more of an awkward fit with how some of these other pitchers are falling. So with the idea of like 80 pitches, 5 innings, I think he maybe falls a little short of the projection, maybe falls a little short of value on FanDuel. I like the price, though, so I think it's worth a few darts. I like the matchup, kinda. 94 on DK makes him a lot harder to work with, but we don't care about the quality start over there. So I think he's on the board on both, but kind of limited interest. Pirates are a little bit better against lefties than they are against righties. Overall, 10th ranked 109 WRC+, although there's a lot of teams like right in that range. A 165 collective ISO. They don't strike out a ton. Guys like McCutcheon up at the top. Reynolds has been bad this year against lefties, but overall is good against lefties for his career. Henry Davis has raked lefties in a tiny, tiny sample and has been good since his promotion, 2,700, 2,900 for him. Carlos Santana's come on a little bit this year. Connor Joe has absolutely crushed lefties this year. Started out the season on fire and has continued that against lefties. 144 WRC+, a 241 ISO in 102 plate appearances. 4 of his 6 home runs have come against lefties. So like less than half of his plate appearances, more than half of his home runs on this side of the split. Gonzalez, Triolo, and Delay, take him or leave him at the bottom of the lineup, but Rodolfo Castro is super interesting against the lefty. For this season, 6 home runs, a 297, 375, 549, triple slash with a 146 WRC+, and a 253 ISO in 104 plate appearances against lefties. Pretty damn good. For his career, he's only 24, so this is only a couple of years, but for his career, 280, 344, 565 with a 285 ISO and a 144 WRC+, and 14 home runs and 221 plate appearances against lefties. That is really good production in a limited sample. So he's clearly somebody who I think we can say with confidence is much better on this side of splits. He gets popular. This is not a secret. He gets popular when facing a lefty. He's always cheap. You would hope to get him a little higher in the batting order. Multi-position eligible on both sides. It makes him a very strong asset when this team faces lefties. Doesn't always come through and always gains a little bit of popularity that sucks, but I think he's very much in play again today. So I think you can go to some shares of Pirates here. Not one that I want to get carried away with, but they're very cheap. I think they're clearly one of the value options for stacking on the board today. Guys like Castro, guys like Connor Joe, make it easy to put this lineup together, and then you just book the stars off the top. They come together very, very easily. The Dodgers on the other side, a lot harder to get to in terms of where they're priced. Always worth it. Tons and tons of upside here. One of the most highly projected teams on the board going up against Yohan Oviedo. 5.10 implied total when I wrote the article this afternoon was a run and a half higher than the 3.51 for the offense I was just talking about. So it's important to remember, keep things in perspective when we talk through these things. Oviedo's not been bad on the hill. 4.61 ERA, a 4.66 xFIP, 19.2% strikeouts in 93 and 2/3. I just think he's overmatched here. He hasn't been filthy for home runs. 89.1 miles an hour of exit velo, a 7.4% barrel rate, 1.9% home runs, but just a gettable enough pitcher who doesn't really strike anybody out, going up against a team that doesn't strike out and has so much power and so much run creation upside. It just leads me more to the Dodgers than it does to the Oviedo side. 6,200, 8,500. At 85 on FanDuel, you just don't need it. At 62 on DK, maybe you can grab a few shares. I wouldn't say that's a mistake for sure. Especially if we're going to some of these other questionable starters on the DK slate. Like, I would just throw him onto that pile as a, well, why wouldn't I, if I'm taking shots with all these others? But it's not likely to come through. It's not likely to succeed. You're looking for a handful of maybe clean innings at that 6,200 price. Very low end option. The Dodgers bats, Mookie, Freddie, Will, Max, JD, all 5 of those guys, just outrageous seasons. They're all priced up. They're all priced up for a reason. Look at all those home runs. That's another group, just 88 home runs for that group of 5 hitters. And all these, at least these 3 at very low strikeout rates. These 2 aggressively high strikeout rates. That's what sets that group a little bit apart from that Diamondbacks group. But these guys are just absolutely elite. These guys are obviously more high-end stars than the Diamondback group. D-backs are like, hey, look at this tier of really successful, somewhat sneaky, less name brand tier 2 types that are having a nice collective season, where the Dodgers are more like, wow, this is an outrageous team of all-stars, and they're all playing really well and doing exactly what we expect. So it's just really interesting. 23 home runs for Mookie, 14 for Freddie, 12 for Smith, 19 for Muncy, 20 for JD. Just a dominant offense. And then you get good usable parts down toward the bottom. The 3 lefty outfielders in David Peralta, Jason Hayward, and James Outman are all usable. They're good mix and match parts. You can take whichever one is in the lineup. You can use 2 of them if there's more than one of them in the lineup. I really like those 3 lefties through the bottom here. And then Miguel Rojas, you mix and match him if you need price savings, but he hasn't been good this season. Jake got here tonight. Got here a little bit late, but he's here. What's up, Jake? He says he loves Kyle Bradish tonight. He loves the Diamondback stacks. I like both of those pieces. Hunter says I'm seeing Rodell projected as the top pitcher. Rodell? Ronel Blanco? Took me a second there. I was like, wait a minute. I'm seeing Tanner Bybee. I'm seeing George Kirby as our 2 very much more likely top starters today. You could see Urias projects well against the Pirates there, but I think we've got a couple good reasons to, think that they might be able to get to him, and then the idea of a pitch count just kind of concerns me. So I'm a little worried about the Urias spot, but I think it's worth going to. It's obviously correctly priced for a short start kind of an opportunity, more so on FanDuel, but I think he's playable on both sites. Sevy, I really question what we're going to get from Sevy, but I think I want to keep going there just on the known ceiling with that starter. On the idea that he claims to be healthy. The Yankees say he's healthy, that on a good night, he'll go out there and knock down a few strikeouts and then be pitching strong in the 5th and not give Aaron Boone a good reason to hook him in the 5th. And now all of a sudden he's pitching in the 7th with 8 strikeouts and hasn't given up a run. I want to be there for that day with this pitcher, especially at these prices. If they're going to keep him down at these prices, it just makes it easy to get to. If he fails, he fails. I don't really care at those prices. I want to be there for the upside day. So I'll have some Sevy. Kyle Bradish. I had to stop and say the word radish in my brain to get the pronunciation to work. This is going to be problematic for the rest of the year. Kyle on the mound for the Orioles, definitely in play. Very much a very good option on the mound here, going up against this limited version of the Yanks with no Stanton in the lineup. 8,500, 7,200, probably a better play than that projection even would say. And that's a good projection for that price. So I like that spot quite a bit for Kyle going for the Orioles. Evaldi, we talked a little bit about his struggles. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Evaldi come out and put up the highest score on the day, though. So I definitely do want to get there. But at price, I prefer Kirby. I prefer Bybee. He would rank 3rd at best for me at price. And you can see where he ranks projection-wise. So it'll be limited, I think, with Evaldi. I think he's the one guy on this slate that might go out, just put together a dominant, like, hey, dummy, why didn't you have this kind of a start? And burn me a little bit. So I'm going to make sure that I book at least a few shares. I'll just sort my sorting process. I'll just, click on the thing that says, all right, just show me the Evaldi lineups. And I'll copy 10 to 15 of those into my player pool just to make sure I've got some. But I'm not sure how it's going to come through the model with him priced that way and projected this way. So I'm very curious about the Evaldi spot. And I definitely think that this is realistic. There are reasons to believe that he's not the pitcher he was at the beginning of the season, that this lineup could get to him. These conditions could definitely get to him. So, yeah, tepid interest in the Evaldi spot, but definitely a strong opportunity for him for sure. Blanco, I think, is in play with the strikeout upside going up against Seattle. Carlos Carrasco, Jordan Lyles, no thank you. Ryan Nelson, no thank you. And then minor interest, despite how they project here, in Cutter Crawford and Joan Oviedo, if you're going for price. Not in Oviedo on the FanDuel slate, but in the 6s on DK. I think those are just darts you can throw. Probably more faith in the Crawford spot against Texas than the Oviedo spot against LA. But both are very, very thin. You're just taking price and throwing a value dart there. Yeah, Yanks don't score. They don't hit any home runs. They don't tend to string together base hits, sequencing any of that. I think I'm sleeping on Ryan Nelson. Okay. Why is that? I'm curious. He's a decently well thought of kid coming up. Take a look. Just hasn't been getting it done in the show so far. Let's see. In the minors, 2022 minors, 26 starts, 136 innings, a 5.51 xFIP and a 5.43 ERA as a 24-year-old in AAA last year. Pitched to a 21.6% strikeout rate. I think we're maybe around where we ought to be. It's a PCL team, I believe. So you got to discount that a little bit. Pacific Coast League. Basically every stadium plays like Coors. I think that's where their minor league team is. It would make sense that it was. So, you forgive a little bit on that probably. And he is a kid that I know they liked a little bit. Looking back over time, was much better than that in AA the year before. 77 innings in AA, 3.51 xFIP, 3.51 ERA, a 32.9% strikeout rate. So I think that's the kid they're looking for. Just needs to pull it together. Probably just, he's only 25, and 25 in 5 months. So I was going to say a young 25. He was a young 25 when the season started. Now he's a mid 25. But I think just, kind of a kid just, trying to find his way. Could he go out there and have a good start? Absolutely. No reason to think that he couldn't, but he just hasn't been. So it's not really a predictive way to look at things, but that's what we've got at this point. I think there's enough power to get to him. This is the part that concerns me, is the low strikeouts and then all these barrels, exit velocity. The hard hits this isn't like crazy bad. It's up. I want to see below 40, but it's not like mid 40s. It's not even like what Carrasco's got on the other side, let's say. But the exit velo matches what Carrasco's done. The barrel rate matches what Carrasco's done on a higher average launch angle. There's just a lot of home run trajectory here. He hasn't given up as many as Carrasco, but I think there's just a lot of good home run trajectory for guys who know how to hit the ball on that kind of a plane. And he has been giving up runs and run creation here. So I don't love the spot, but if you want to go there at 6,000 on DK, any of those struggles are absolutely baked in. So if you believe there's upside, for sure, that could be on the board for you as one of those value darts. He's got enough in his minor league track record to justify the play. I'll say that much. He just hasn't gotten it done at this level, like really much at all. What's he done in the game log? I don't love game log hunting, but let me see. Good in the last 2 starts. I give him that much. 6 strikeouts in each of the last 2. 7 innings, 7 1/3 against San Francisco and LA on the road. Those are good starts. 5 innings before that. Gave up 3. 6 hits. 6 Ks. Ugly start before that. Some bumps along the way for sure. Couple of totally viable DFS starts in here though. Yeah, maybe I was underselling him a little bit. If he's the guy that he was the last 2 starts, I was definitely underselling him. I'll say that. Those are 2 very good starts. 3 hits, 1 run in each, struck out 6 in each, gave up a homer to somebody in the LA game, not in the San Francisco game. Not bad. Still not going to probably lead me there. When I didn't like him, when my numbers aren't really suggesting that I go to him, but I think there's at least a little bit of an idea for upside, and definitely at price at 6,000. That's why it's conversational, guys. That's why I'm not here to tell you that I'm right and you're wrong. I think it's always enjoy the feedback, and this is a discussion. This is a conversation, and sometimes you guys help me find the right plays, and hopefully sometimes I help you find the right plays. So that's an interesting one to keep in mind. I'll be curious to watch how it plays out. Astros are treading water, but considering all their injuries, they're actually gaining games quickly on the Rangers. Yeah, and the Rangers have been faltering a little bit over the past couple of weeks, if memory serves. Right back at it. 38 likes, 39 watching. What a ratio. What a ratio. Love it. Trey says, I just ran a bunch of lines and got 1.3% of Aldi. That not a big enough fan either tonight. Yeah, I think it's just a tough fit with where he'll fall in a lot of projection models for those prices. I think it's just, a lot of things come together differently. That also does kind of tickle the brain of like, if it's not coming through a lot of optimizers for the public, then it means maybe he falls a little bit under own. So maybe I put my thumb on the scale and try to get to a little bit more. This is where sometimes you get lost in the weeds of just like, all right, if they're going to do this, then I should do this. But if I do that, they're going to know that I'm going to do that. So I'm going to pivot to this, and you get twisted up a little bit in that kind of thinking from time to time. But it might be worth it. It might be at least worth exploring or keeping an eye on that ownership. Anyway, 544 coming up on 6 o'clock. Favorite contrarian stack, asks Mamba. Probably the Royals, especially if Bibby's going to be that popular. I think it's just, you go to that and take a target at some of that popularity that he's going to draw. I don't expect it to succeed all that frequently. They've been just awful, and I think he's a good young pitcher. But that's probably a good spot. And then I don't know what the Pirates' popularity looks like, but I think maybe some shots with the Pirates going up against Urias in that late game with the quality that they show against lefties from time to time with some of the names in that lineup. I think it makes some sense. Colton Cowser at 2K. Absolutely, OMG. You got to go there. I think that's a killer spot there. Dennis had 75 minutes. Does that mean I got to punch out now, Den? Good stuff. All right, gang. I appreciate everybody hanging out. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe. Really appreciate it. Jump in the Discord. Always around. Always good conversations and chat going on, whether it's about baseball or anything else in the free Discord. So make sure you're getting there. Dive on in. Appreciate it, gang. Mama says I love it. That's what I was thinking. Pitt loves lefties. Yeah, for sure. Definitely a good spot there. Don't forget Rodolfo Castro. All right, gang. I'm hitting the punch out button. See you at the top of the standings tonight.